share once this is over. So first and foremost, I want to thank you, Roger, for being here today. We really appreciate it. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Ray, for having me.
So Roger, I guess it makes sense to kind of kick it off with a quick explanation of who Nutanix is as a company. Can you sort of just give us a little bit of background?
Sure. So Nutanix is a global leader in cloud software and a pioneer in hyperconverged infrastructure, essentially making infrastructure and computing solutions invisible. So we were founded in 2009, San Jose, California. That's our headquarters. We're a global company, approximately 130 countries. We've got 10 worldwide support centers, 500 plus support personnel. We roughly have around close to 18,000 customers globally, with 97% customer retention satisfaction, which speaks to our industry-leading support and our customer obsession. We've pioneered hyperconverged infrastructure from the beginning, and we're still the leader today. So.
That's great. Thank you. So hyperconverged infrastructure is certainly becoming very, very important and very popular, right, topic-wise, as we were discussing before we jumped in the call. So certainly there are a lot of challenges within IT, and within IT specifically, folks who are standing up IT environments for production in particular. What are some of their challenges?
Yes, I think it's some of the same challenges traditional IT environments have. There's a lot of complexity around the historic architecture, three-tier architecture. There's a very manual approach on provisioning, very manual approach to how to consume gear, siloed. I think in the cloud era we live in today, there isn't an elegant way. Customers don't have an elegant way to take advantage of a hybrid workflow, or how do they keep from siloing their public cloud workloads and resources from their on-prem. I think there's also a struggle with security when you talk about these kinds of environments that live in private cloud versus public cloud. So these are all some of the same challenges both organizations face.
So to that end then, in terms of answering some of those challenges, can you describe Nutanix Platform and how it addresses some of those security and sort of silo issues that people encounter when dealing with sort of the older, just straight up converged infrastructures? Sure.
So at our core, Nutanix, we have one platform that we say run any app, any cloud. And what that really means is our enterprise cloud platform, our hyperconverged infrastructure is at our core. And the hyperconverged infrastructure is your physical hardware compute nodes that have storage, it's compute, and we wrap virtualization into that management operations with a pretty nice interface, our Prism interface, which is HTML5. And then on top of that, customers can leverage data center services like extra storage functionality, where there's object storage, files for enterprise file share. They can do DevOps services and operations, which is automation, whether it's cloud native. And then they can do desktop services like traditional VDI, desktop as a service, and various digital workspaces. And we bring all that together, shrink wrapped in a very easy way to consume and deploy, where there aren't these silos of management interfaces or fiber channel or storage arrays and then an additional virtualization level. All of that is presented in a very elegant form where the operations team, the customer doesn't have to know virtualization. They don't have to be a storage expert. They don't have to be a compute expert.
That's great. I know just from talking to Eric, who's our testing resource at Avid, who set everything up, he was thrilled with it from the standpoint of being able to basically out of the box, turn it on and have really minimal setup time and configuration time. And since it's been in the lab, he's done nothing but sing its praises for sure. So setup time is critical, right? And the easy use of it is really fantastic, right?
Absolutely. It's, traditional infrastructure planning takes weeks, sometimes months, then deployment, again, takes weeks and months. And customers spend less time on the advancement of the applications they're supporting or the workflow, and they spend so much more time on infrastructure. And Nutanix wants to, completely get rid of all of those, inefficiencies, make it super easy. Most customers can deploy a cluster and be up and running within an hour. And Eric can attest to that. He's seen that definitely. And The platform itself gives customer unparalleled choice, right? We don't lock in customers to hardware. We don't lock them into a hypervisor or a public cloud offering. And they also have a variety of choices from a consumption model. So
very cool. And so basically 3-tiered infrastructures are becoming a thing of the past. Part of that is because of some of the things we talked about, but some of it also has to do with the business goals now, right? Because IT used to be thought of as this cost center, right? And that's what it was. It was, we have to spend money here in order to drive the business. But that mindset's kind of changing. Can you describe a little bit of that and sort of, what that sort of means in the hyperconverged world?
Yeah, so I think part of what's driving that change is some of the things we definitely talked about. The lengthy time it takes to procure, the inability to scale and really move the business forward, and I think procurement, operations, things like that. The other aspect to that is, senior management and companies, customers, they don't want to invest in all these lengthy skill sets that people have to go months and months to learn, whether you have a virtualization expert, a storage expert, a compute expert. And Hyperconverged, in essence, really removes the necessity for that. And it's quickly to scale. It's quickly to go and deploy your applications. And from a Nutanix perspective, it's cloud ready. So it's ready to help you with that hybrid workflow, help you with those cloud native applications. Legacy infrastructure, again, through the last 8 or 9 months, a lot of customers saw that it was really hard to scale that for the new world we live in, and time to market was really lengthy. And I think, after, we come out of this new world and how we do business and build infrastructure, HCI is going to be even bigger. And we see that in the, compounded annual growth of the market from 2018 all to 2025. I think there's a statistic out there that says it's roughly about 30% compounded annual growth. So
that's good. Thanks, Roger. That's good. So in terms of the hardware, obviously the hardware is important here, right? But what makes you guys unique is the fact that you can run on pretty much any platform, right? You guys could run on just about anything. So talk about that. And then also, could you talk about sort of what the software components are, right? What are the available software pieces and sort of, what's happening in the software that sort of allows this, simplicity to happen?
Sure. So yeah, our platform is agnostic to pretty much all the major x86 vendors out there, whether it's Supermicro or own appliance model or HPE, Dell, Lenovo, et cetera. Within the software itself, the user-facing Nutanix product is extremely simple to deploy and use. And this is primarily possible through abstraction of automation and integration of the software. And I think we do a lot of clever things in the background, but just to really high level summarize that, the compute utilization, how we look at compute utilization across our nodes, looking at how it breaches thresholds, and how we perform migrations, and leverage those resources collectively versus, server by server. Their storage performance being hyper-converged, right? We manage both compute and storage resources. How we do the scheduling and monitoring of each nodes, and the processes behind the scenes, the software processes behind the scenes that do that. From a security perspective, we're STIG, FIPS, NIST, an ISO common criteria, certified and qualified. And then we also deploy our own security configuration automation system within our platform that helps with self-healing and make sure auditing is in process. So there's a lot of intelligence and automation in the background that helps ensure the performance of the cluster, the health of the cluster.
Very cool. And so HCI really started out as a way to sort of virtualize storage, but then it's become so much more than that, right? I mean, it really encompasses the entire environment. Can you sort of elaborate a little bit on that as well?
Sure, yeah. So we started out, when we started selling product Nutanix, for example, in 2011 is when we started selling product. And, we're very much a VDI solution, supporting, just one hypervisor. And we've grown to 100% software defined, supporting multiple hypervisors. And, with that came extra server virtualization workloads. So now we can pretty much serve any workload, any app. We do a lot of machine learning and automation customers, can have build their own self-service portal on their platform. So that truly that cloud-like experience that you've gone to Azure for or AWS, we're offering in a private cloud with the ability to extend out to the public cloud.
And you mentioned Azure. You guys recently announced a partnership with Azure, right? Where you qualified Nutanix to run in Azure environments. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So that announcement came out in September, and GA is going to be early. General availability is going to be early next year. Customers are in early access right now and can sign up for early access. And that really is, Nutanix and Microsoft really came together in a partnership. It wasn't just a architecture announcement. They both built this use case together where you can have Nutanix ready nodes out in Azure, Nutanix bare metal. You can extend your private Nutanix cloud out to Azure. And then you can leverage Azure's native services. So whether it's blob storage, it's VDI, or whatever native services you want to take advantage of. It's also a joint support model. Nutanix and Microsoft work through a lengthy support structure where Nutanix support can actually take full support of that, and you'll obviously have Microsoft in the background as well. So it's really a complete package. You'll see even more developmental work come out of the next few months for that platform. But again, leveraging Nutanix Prism interface, connecting your Azure account directly to that single interface, having the ability to deploy your workloads directly into Azure, or bringing them back from Azure onto Nutanix, having that flexibility in a true hybrid model. And I think that's what's missing. And Nutanix is offering, that leading software, being that control plane where either it's, if you have a single cloud vendor or you're a multi-cloud customer and you have your own private cloud, that's the missing link there, the ability to, go across those multiple clouds and deploy those workloads. And that's a phenomenal thing I think customers are really excited about.
Yeah, for sure. And some of the deployments that we've already done, right, that are Avid environments kind of run, the gamut in terms of, news versus post versus, everything in between, right? We've done a few deployments that really sort of represent different workflows, right?
Absolutely. So a lot of, like you said, a lot of deployment, whether it covers film or, traditional broadcast, and even in some instance, corporate media, we've done a tremendous amount of that work across whether it's Media Composer or Media Central production environments. I think the things that customers see there is the ease of use of historically trying to virtualize Media Composer environments with 3-tier or Media Central, the lengthy process. We've seen multiple customers out of the gate, within a day or two, they're already deploying virtual Media Composers, and they've really got, production systems running. So very, very quick rollouts and more turnkey.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Nexus too, right? Talk a little bit about Nexus and how Nexus plugs into the broader Nutanix environment, because I know that there was some work done there on both sides.
Sure. So Nutanix is a fully backend IP-based hyperconverged. It's all IP, and Nexus. We still use Nexus part of the architecture with Avid, whether it's Media Composer or Media Central production, or if you still call it interplay services. Nexus media storage is still very much part of that architecture. And whether you're architecting for 10 gig, 40 gig, 100 gig network, we've tested the Nexus, client and the storage to make sure that we have best practices around that and how to deploy that. So that's still very much part of the environment. And we do have best practices. I think the actual Media Central production best practices are on your site. And I believe we're working on some of the Media Composer best practices now that should be up there shortly.
All right, cool. And where can people find out more information in terms of some of what is available today, right, from Nutanix? Is it just Nutanix.com, or is there any place specifically that they should be visiting to dig in a little deeper?
Yeah, I think Nutanix.com, our main website, is definitely the right place to go. We also have a sub-page within there. You can find an industry and you'll find media entertainment. You could obviously reach out to, if you're obviously an Avid customer, any of your Avid reps as well. So there's a lot of different places. We're also, the channel. So if you buy through the channel, we have, hundreds of channel partners you can get educated with as well.
Yeah, and Avid and Nutanix are, really partnering here, meaning, we were just talking about this, how, it was only yesterday you did a overview for the sales teams, in terms of the different engagements we have going on, the different sort of environments that we're already supporting today. When you look ahead, Roger, in terms of HCI, what do you see technology-wise that further sort of augments what's happening with HCI and makes it even more compelling than maybe it already is today?
Yeah, so I think the next step here is, we've done the performance work. We've shown the elegance of use. I think what we have to do is, make things even more turnkey than they are today. So a lot around automation, self-service, working on that with joint use cases. So even within Nutanix and Avid, the next step of our relationship, how do we, make that automated process of deploying a media composer or deploying Media Central production and all of the services that go along with that. So I think the next step here in evolution for HCI is definitely, the core foundation is simplifying the infrastructure. Now we're going to go automate and make this more self-service.
Yeah, so almost like auto provisioning, cloud resources, basically, right? Basically make it so it's very similar. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. And then in terms of the company, right? Nutanix as a company, right? You guys obviously deal in other things besides just media entertainment, but what does the company see overall as well as sort of some of the trends that they're capitalizing on as well?
Definitely, as a company, we look at a lot of surveys, whether it's Gartner or Forrester or Cloud Index surveys, and we've obviously surveyed our own customers. And the go-forward model, where 86% of customers surveyed said hybrid cloud is going to be the best operating model for them. And this is why Nutanix has invested in our product called Nutanix Clusters, where we have the ability to extend the private environment out to AWS and Azure. And I think this is going to be the evolution. The next big thing here is customers looking for solutions that can elegantly stretch that data center into the public cloud, leverage the cloud native resources with very little retooling, very little training on other systems, and ensuring that networking isn't complex, all of those things that fundamentally go along with deployments in the cloud. And I think that's where we see the evolution here happening.
And that's great. That's good. Thank you. When it comes to doing an actual deployment, how do you guys typically engage? Is it more consultative where you sit down, you talk about what it is people have in terms of infrastructure today, how you can simplify that, and then you sort of come up with a phased approach? Or is it, all right, yes, we can help you guys. Here's the software, have at it. Like, what's the typical engagement model?
Yeah, so we definitely work with our customers to understand their business goals and what they're trying to build towards, because they've been used to doing things one way, and they're talking to Nutanix. They're looking at our platform because they want to do things differently, and we try to align with their business goals and say, okay, you're not doing automation today, and maybe you want to look at automation. You want to simplify how you provision. And then from there, we look at the workloads. Obviously, we have tools that go identify workloads, things like that we can run. And from there, it's really a conversation, a sizing exercise. And again, it's really more about the business outcomes than it is about, the underlying physical hardware. At some point that gets discussed, but since we're pretty much software defined, the customer can choose their platforms, things like that. But we just ensure that the workloads can, they can go and deploy their workload easily. And again, scale comes into question. And, that's the thing about Nutanix. You could start very small and you can scale infinitely, right? And that's the cloud-like experience.
And we have done, as we were saying earlier, but we've done not just editorial, we've done asset management, right? Sitting on this infrastructure. So like you mentioned, Media Central can sit on a Nutanix architecture and work perfectly fine. Same with Media Composer, and that includes virtualized Media Composers, all sitting in that same Nutanix environment, all connected to Nexus, even multi-tiers of Nexus, even extending out into the cloud. I mean, all of that is available today.
Correct. Yes. So anything around Media Central production and Media Composer that can be virtualized is available today on our platform. And from a Media Central production aspect, you can actually, in the beginning of the year when Azure is G8 and fully released, you could take an advantage of that expansion into the public cloud with Azure.
And all of this is managed from one UI, right? Like one Nutanix UI.
Correct. Prism is our HTML5 front end. and everything is managed. So whether you're, provisioning VMs, you're uploading images for your, image cluster, or whether you're, looking at hardware, health of hardware, built-in analytics and machine learning is all built into the same UI. And customers, again, they can bring their cloud accounts and attach it to Prism, and then go off to the races in the public cloud from there.
Very cool. And I will encourage folks to ask any questions in the chat you may have for Roger around HCI, and we'll try and answer those. So please don't be shy. So Roger, another interesting thing I think about HCI is sort of what's happening under the hood in terms of the analytics that you just mentioned. So what are some of the analytics that you guys are providing that are either business intelligence or just infrastructure intelligence that people then can easily act on? Or is there even part of that analytics doing sort of, finding errors and issues and maybe even addressing them before, you ever even know it? Is there those types of capabilities there too?
Yes, absolutely. Within Prism, you have all of those analytical capabilities. So finding hotspots or things that can be an issue and self-correcting is built into the platform. Customers can actually look at their infrastructure from a graphical interface and say, hey, I want to add a workload. So I want to add 10 more media composers, or I want to grow my media central production environment by this much. They can just type in how many resources they're going to anticipate using. And we have a runway graphical interface that'll show them, hey, this is how much resources based on what you're doing today, based on trend analysis and the machine learning algorithm built into the platform, you're going to either have enough resources to last you this long, or no, you can't deploy that day one. If you want to deploy this within this period of time, here are the resources that you need to add. So all of those machine learning algorithms are playing. We have algorithms in the background that obviously look at performance metrics from a storage perspective, as well as a compute and our scheduling system internally to ensure that the cluster is being utilized in the most efficient and performant manner.
And then in terms of, obviously we talked about Nutanix supports pretty much any of the big, storage platform vendors out there, same thing with servers for that matter. Can you talk a little bit about the openness of the platform and any of the APIs and SDKs that are available and some of the third-party partners that you tend to work with?
Sure. So Nutanix is pretty open. We actually have a living document on the internet called the Nutanix Bible. It's a living document, so as our platform gets updated, the information is updated on there. And if you go look through that document, it tells everyone exactly what we do and how we do it, from a distributive storage fabric, how we manage metadata, how we communicate internally within the cluster, what services are running. And we're built on pretty much open source, CentOS, KVM hypervisor, and we support, Prism, our HTML5 interface. Through that, we support RESTful APIs. So everything that we do within Prism, we do have customers that actually write their own interfaces because it's easy. That's pretty much, it's pretty open. We do a lot of integration work with, if we talk about enterprise features, whether it's backup, partners, it's, asset management partners, things like that. So because we're open and because we leverage the RESTful API, there's a lot of things out there that customers have worked with other vendors on, and a lot of our third parties vendors find it easy to integrate.
Very cool. And in terms of the size of implementations, right? There's no limit, right? I mean, there's no limit in terms of the environment for Nutanix, right? It could be multi-sites, globally located, customers that have offices all around the world. They could all be deploying Nutanix, right? And they could all be sort of orchestrated and playing together, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's no theoretical limit of how much nodes you can have in a single cluster, or even if you're mixing nodes within a single vendor. So for example, if I have an HP cluster, I'm running Nutanix on, and I started with DL360s and I need to go to DL380s, you can mix and match within that same vendor. And you could, from a single UI, you can manage different geographical locations. So you could have multiple clusters around the world and manage that from the same interface. So yeah, there's no theoretical limit on how you scale. Very
cool. And then when the Microsoft piece is added, is that just through the same UI? extending those resources that are Azure resources, whether they be compute, storage, or even bandwidth? Is that all going to be, extensible through the Nutanix UI?
Absolutely. So again, Nutanix has made the infrastructure invisible. Our next step here is trying to make the cloud invisible. So it doesn't matter where the workload lives, as long as the workload can perform and deliver the SLAs needed. We try to make that invisible to whoever's using the application. And from the operational perspective, person deploying and managing that environment, it should just be one click. Here, I create a VM, I deploy that workload, or I create multiple VMs to support an application, and I deploy that. I just, hey, I want to deploy that whether on-prem, AWS, Azure. It's seamless.
This is pretty amazing. So in terms of the trends, right? It's certainly post-COVID, right? Everybody's distributed workflows. People, I think, are learning that remote workflows are effective, right? People are getting things done. And while it's obviously not ideal, and it's always great to be, together in an office, the fact that you can do as much as you can do nowadays remotely, especially with production, I think is one of the takeaways out of this pandemic. And certainly what Nutanix provides is certainly helping with that distributed workflow and the ability to sort of set up the environments to enable that, which opens up all kinds of possibilities, right? In terms of not only who you can work with, right? Because the sort of geographical limitations maybe that existed in the past all go away, not just with Nutanix, but with the cloud, right? But also with the fact that you have this now ease of deployment that sort of, I think, takes some of that burden off the organization where they can really focus on the creative part of it and maybe not have to worry quite as much about sort of the IT side of it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, especially our customers, our existing customers, and even the potential customers, when they look at Nutanix, they see the ability to focus more on the business, on how to move. If you're a media customer and you want to develop workflows and help the business, how to move that forward quickly. A lot of people we talk to spend so much time just putting fires out with infrastructure problems, or they're spending hours and weeks just trying to identify infrastructure issues. We simplify all that. And from a global perspective, a global collaboration, Prism allows you to do that. You can manage, we have customers that manage thousands of nodes globally. We have one administrator that does that because, again, it's a single pane of glass, if you will, and it gives you visibility across your entire environment. Full life cycle management. So it's really simplifying those day-to-day tasks that people spend days and hours behind.
And is Nutanix licensed like as a service, or is it something you buy straight up, or both?
Yeah, so historically, we've done a life of device licensing model. We've moved over the last few years. We've moved away from that subscription model. So we're catering to customers who want to, who want to embrace the OpEx budgeting and as well as the CapEx budgeting. So if you want to buy, subscription models for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, you have the flexibility to do that. And we do have multiple licensing models. If you're running, for example, Media Composer, and it's a virtual desktop infrastructure, essentially, your VDI pricing would be used for a cluster like that. And then if you're running server virtualization workloads, then you'd just be using a different licensing model. But again, both of them can be, consumed in subscription models from a minimum of 1 year to 3, 5 years, however you want to do it.
Very cool. Well, we're getting close to the end of the time. It goes by quick, like I was saying. Is there anything, Roger, we should leave everybody with as it relates specifically to Nutanix? I can tell you from our perspective, like I said, the relationship is fantastic. The feedback so far from all the tech guys has been just overwhelmingly positive in terms of all the things we discussed today. So, but is there anything else we should let people know before we wrap it up?
No, I think we covered quite a bit. Again, the Nutanix message is freedom of choice. We're 100%, software defined, just to reiterate that. And hypervisor, hardware vendor, and public cloud, just freedom to choose. So no lock-in there. And it's, again, the relationship with Avid has been tremendous. It's been great, and I think customers have been embracing that a lot.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Roger. Thank you for your time today. Great job as always. And I want to thank you all for being a part of our webinar today. Like I said, this will be recorded. We'll post all of this for everybody to watch at a later date if you want to pass it on to somebody who may have missed it. If you want to learn more, go to Nutanix.com, or you can go to Avid.com. We once again thank everybody and have a great day.